Good morning, colleagues. I'm pleased to join you by video for the SIM Caribbean MIL and Media Stakeholder Engagement Workshop in Grenada today. My thanks, of course, go to the Government of Grenada, the Government Information Services, the Grenada National Commission for UNESCO, our regional partners, of course, fellow panelists, and let me also extend a special word of appreciation to Ms. Keisha Gallinou, Secretary General of the National Commission, for her leadership, and to my colleague, Ms. Arita Phillip, for the careful coordination which has made this event possible. Uh, Let me, my purpose today, of course, is to connect UNESCO's global work with the practical realities facing Caribbean people and institutions, and of course, looking at the way in which media and information literacy is impacting lives and bringing improvements and ensuring development. So let me first of all begin with the why. I think it's important to note that UNESCO's work in this area is not mainly about workshops or toolkits or producing resources. Of course, these are very important instruments, but the deeper purpose, of course, is to protect the conditions that allow people to live freely, safely, and of course, with dignity. In small societies, which are quite common across the Caribbean, information moves very quickly. It can prepare us and, of course, build confidence. But at the same time, inaccurate information, hate speech, manipulation, and silence can weaken trust. So MIL, Media and Information Literacy, is therefore a very important part of this social public infrastructure. Now, at the global level, UNESCO's MIL program operates as an ecosystem. It offers practical resources. It helps governments to develop policies. It connects communities of practice and encourages innovation. The global MIL webpage, which you can access, points to MOOCs, massive open online courseware, curricula, handbooks, a variety of publications, digital skills, resources, podcasts, and videos. It also, of course, makes clear that MIL policy, it's not something that can be just left to chance. One-off trainings, of course, help individuals, but policies help to create systems. And UNESCO's global networks help make MIL a shared and accessible public capability. Now, let's think about some of the challenges and also opportunities. Now, several global actions that UNESCO is undertaking in the framework of MIL are especially useful for the Caribbean. If we think about the MIL Cities Initiative, this invites municipalities to become hubs for learning through both physical and virtual activities. So in some way, this is quite much linked to today's event. We also have the annual celebration of Global MIL Week, which usually runs from around the 24th to the 31st of October each year and serves as an event to mobilize stakeholders worldwide, sharing experiences, case studies, good practices. In 2024, we had some 81 countries celebrating, and this is something which is, of course, increasing. We saw something like over 10,000 creators enrolled in Trusted Voice Online, and a large number, over 200 youth organizations equipped with MIL skills. So I'd just like to invite all of you to consider how you might engage with this year's celebrations. Now, media stakeholders as a key focal group in today's event. Now, I think the Caribbean brings a distinctive reality to this global agenda. We are, of course, small states. We're highly exposed to climate and economic shocks, but also deeply creative and strongly connected. Our information systems are, of course, very personal. People often know the journalists, the people on the news. They may have even gone to school with them. They know the public officers, the teachers, community leaders. And of course, in such tight-knit and connected societies, when trust is damaged, its impacts, its effects move very quickly. Similarly, when trust is strengthened, it also moves very quickly, building ties. Now, Sim Caribbean makes this global MIL agenda and all of these issues very practical for small islands. Uh, and of course, it links a lot of the key issues that relate to trust. So, for example, it links ethics, questions around AI, inclusion, health, culture, rights, and of course, institutional resilience. So, for media stakeholders, I think MIL must begin with a recognition that attention is not the same thing as trust. If we think about a social media post, this might travel quite far, be retweeted, looked at by many persons, but still, it might not serve the needs of the public. In fact, it might actually harm or fail the public. And so, of course, UNESCO's work on journalism and media development is grounded in the idea that accurate information and professional journalism are key pillars that support democracy, that support accountability, and that support sustainable development. This also, of course, applies to other actors in the journalistic and media fields. We can think of, for example, government communicators, government information services. We can think, of course, of content creators at large, social influencers, of course, public institutions, and very importantly, community media. I think at the bottom of all this is a very practical question: what it is that the public needs to know, and how do we, as facilitators of information, provide them with this information in a responsible and ethical way. Very, very important responsibility. So let's talk a little bit about access to information. And of course, access to information is both a right and a practical tool for better governance. UNESCO is the custodian agency for Sustainable Development Indicator 1610.2 on guarantees for public access to information. And so, of course, it works globally, and it's also very active here in the Caribbean in addressing this issue. And in the context of small governments, small administrations, access to information, or ATI as it's often referred to, or freedom of information, can seem like an added burden. But if it's designed well, it really plays a very key role in helping to build trust. It can reduce rumors and improve public communication. And if we think, for example, about times of crisis, that is a time when people especially need information on risks, on services, on where to go to for assistance. And access to information frameworks can really play a key role in this. And of course, good record keeping, proactive disclosure about issues affecting the public, constructive relationships between government entities and the media. These are all important parts of making sure that reliable, trusted information goes out. And this, of course, helps to underpin the resilience of societies. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is something which makes the need for media and information literacy even more urgent, more compelling. As we know, generative AI can support creativity. It's very useful for things like translation. It can support us in our research and access to knowledge. At the same time, however, AI can also generate synthetic media. Synthetic media, it's like a double-edged sword. Of course, synthetic media has good uses, but it's also challenging in that it can create things like deep fakes. It can deepen misinformation. It can reproduce stereotypes and create confusion about the reliability of sources. And of course, just thinking about the way in which synthetic media is generated, it also raises important questions linked to copyright and the payment, fair payment of content creators. Now, UNESCO's policy work on MIL and generative AI emphasizes the empowerment of users. It places human agency and control at the center, and it really insists on things like explainability, understanding how we arrive at various conclusions, reliability, and of course, wider participation. And to ensure wider participation, it's important that persons engage inclusively with these technologies. Now, for the Caribbean, this of course connects very directly to the Caribbean Artificial Intelligence Policy Roadmap, which, as you may be aware, was recently endorsed by CARICOM. It's a Ministerial Council on Trade and Economic Development as a regional policy. And this milestone was achieved under the leadership of Grenada's Prime Minister, Dickon Mitchell. And so I think this is of something which is, I think you can all be, of course, we all as Caribbean people, but particularly you in Grenada can be especially proud of. And this roadmap aims to harness AI to support the region's sustainable development. And of course, it focuses on areas such as culture and creativity, governance and transformation, upskilling and education, which is, of course, key for ensuring that everyone can really participate and benefit from these new technological developments. So, of course, resilience and sustainability. And of course, as we know, resilience, we are in one of the most hazard impacted regions of the world. So, Sim Caribbean, uh, this event is part of that, and it's I would say a very important step in helping to localize UNESCO's global MIL agenda and to tailor it to the Caribbean region. And of course, this is something which has built on previous work, which was conducted in Antigua and Barbuda. We had extensive youth engagements. We reached over 338 youth stakeholders. We interacted with some 46 local youth organizations, including organizations representing persons with disabilities. And we addressed a range of topics: digital transformation, online hate speech, discrimination, disinformation, the mental health impacts of social media content. We looked at how to also take these things into account to develop responsible and ethical communication strategies, and of course, building key digital skills. I think this is very significant because this provided us with a model, and this model looked at engaging young people, including vulnerable groups, connecting national development priorities with digital skills, and of course, turning this awareness into actual organizational practices. And in the Sim Caribbean actions that have been carried out since then, including today and tomorrow's hybrid event in Grenada, this logic is also being extended, being applied, and with a specific focus on the media sector. So again, we're building on what has come before to improve, to extend our reach. Now, again, I think the issue of crises, it's something which cannot be separated from our day-to-day life here in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is often recognized as perhaps one of the most hazard-prone regions, or second most hazard-prone regions of the world. So that's something that's very important. And even and in this vein, the role of information as a life-saving tool just as important as water, as important as shelter, as important as food. I think this becomes very important. And if we think about this in the context of, let's say, hurricanes, before a hurricane and even leading up to hurricanes, public service announcements, providing accurate information, it helps people to prepare for, these hazards. The same can be said about things like droughts, about fires, about earthquakes. And of course, during an emergency, having had this information, it enables people to make better and safer decisions. And of course, after a disaster, having reliable information, it helps communities know where to go to for assistance. It helps them to understand what is going on, what is being done as services are being restored. And of course, this knowledge allows people to avoid rumors, to avoid scams, and also the mental stress that accompanies, scams and rumors and so on. And of course, UNESCO's media in crisis preparedness and response work in the Caribbean includes a strong component of community media support. We look at things like rapid needs assessments, disaster reporting training, fact checking, and of course, coordination with national disaster systems. And so what's really important is that we see media not just as documenters or observers or chroniclers of the crisis, but in fact, they're a very important part of the resilience system, that architecture which helps people to prepare, cope, and recover from events. So I think you might probably be uh, familiar with the idea of the infinite game. So finite games are games where the players, the competitors are known. There is a fixed goal. So, for example, if you think of something like football, two opposing teams, the objective is within a set time, 90 minutes. So scoring the most number of goals, as opposed to, let's say, infinite games, uh, things which persist for a long time. So, for example, developing a country. How do we know when we have succeeded in developing a country? We can move from different phases, stages. If we think about Maslow's pyramid, that gives you an idea addressing basic needs, shelter, clothing, healthcare, and moving up to more abstract concepts. And life, it's in many ways it's like this. And similarly with our work today, we're not just simply trying to quote unquote win this 2-day workshop. What we're trying to do is to build a system, to build a system of strengthened and continuing trust, of learning, of cooperation, within Grenada, across the region. And after the workshop, we need to ask, what will continue? What are the new habits that, as a result of today's workshop, will remain? What are relationships that will be made stronger as a result of today's event? And what are the practices that you, as media stakeholders, will adopt in your newsrooms, in your government units, in the community groups, youth organizations that you belong to? And I think, as I said, looking at these long-term goals, it's very important. It can often be slow processes, but I think influence, it's built through respect. It's built by listening, and I think it's built by having very shared purposes and uniting around these common goals. Now, as you move through the sessions today and tomorrow, I'd really like you to keep one question in mind. And this question might be interpreted in different ways by different groups or from different lenses. And that question is, how does what we're doing help Caribbean people to access trustworthy information, to participate safely in these digital and also analog information and community spaces and hold institutions to account. From the perspective or the lens of journalism or journalistic ethics, I think that leads to questions around accuracy and fairness in, for example, reporting. If you think about artificial intelligence, this question leads us to really reflect on and think about issues related to things like human agency. Who is in control of these systems? Are we aware of what's going on? And of course, transparency. For persons, if we think of the disability and gender equality lenses, I think this question reminds us that information systems must serve everyone. And that phrase of no one left behind, it really, needs to be not just a phrase, but something which has very practical meaning from the point of views of, let's say, health, economy, culture, and intellectual property. I think it's really important for us to, within this question, to consider how is information shaping the opportunities that we have around us. How does it influence issues like identity and the creation of livelihoods from the creative skills, content, and so forth. And I think if each session is able to answer or shed light in a very practical way on these questions and reflections, I think the workshop will go a very long way towards strengthening the information ecosystems or information commons. So now, in closing, I again want to thank our partners, the Government of Grenada, the Grenada National Commission for UNESCO, Government Information Services, all the regional partners, panelists, you, the participants, whether you're joining in person or online, and of course, the UNESCO colleagues and others who've supported these processes. I just want to make a plug here for the aspect of assessments. I invite you to please treat the assessments that we are doing during this workshop very, very seriously. It's not just an administrative exercise. They really help us to understand what you as participants know, what you come here seeking, and also what changes as a result of your participation. And it helps us to understand where follow-up is needed and what types of follow-up. And that feedback is very, very important because it will help UNESCO, it will help our other partners to, for example, understand, what is it that we need to do next. And of course, by doing this, it helps us to more effectively invest our resources in MIL matters. And please know that we're not just producing this and letting you go. We will be accompanying you every step of the way. And so, in closing, I wish you all a very productive 2 days of engagement and look forward to continuing this collaboration and conversation. Thank you.